As the wall height approaches the height of the bottom of the windows, that is in the order of 3 feet or 1 meter, you will start to use short logs. We have already dealt with the placement of these logs and the control of the wall height. In addition to the alignment of these logs, it is a good idea to measure the length accurately. This should be 50 millimeters or about 2 inches longer than the final cut for the opening. The bottom of the opening need not be cut yet, but plan to locate this height a little above the midpoint of the log. In most cases, you will have the option of adjusting the window height to meet this criteria. If not, try to choose log sizes in advance to accomplish the purpose. Logs that are cut almost through make a poor lower sill position. Door openings are handled in exactly the same way. The only difference will be the amount of settling space left at the top. More about this when we do the layout on the header log. Header log is the name given to the log that will have the cutout for the top of the windows and doors. Ideally, the flat cut for the top of the window or door should be a little below the midpoint of the log and at 2150 millimeters or 7 feet above the finished floor. Some compromise will often have to be accepted, but this is what you should aim for, and if you have good logs, it's quite attainable. When the header log is on the building and ready for scribing, the layout for the tops of the openings can be undertaken. Determine the scribe width that you will use and note this in a location that will be cut away later. Locate the center line of the opening and measure in the width. If you have previously located this center on the sill log, it will only be necessary to bring the mark up with a level. If you do not have this location, measure it onto the center line of the header log and transfer it down to each side with a square on the center line and a level on the side. Or measure from the center line layout you cut onto the top of the stump. Measure up from the bottom of the sill log to locate the top cut of the window. Add the scribe width to the combined window height and settling allowance, and use this to determine the optimum window location. Settling allowance is related to the height of the opening you are working on. For green logs, this allowance should be 1 to 16, or simply divide the door or window height in millimeters or inches by 16 to give you the additional height needed for a settling. For example, a window that is 900 millimeters or 36 inches high, the allowance would be 900 divided by 16, which would be 56 millimeters, or 36 divided by 16, which would be 2 1/4 inches. Mark the exact cut width onto the header log. Then extend the height measurement that you have already located to intersect this mark. Use your level to draw this height to the other side of the window, or better yet, snap a linked line at the header height after you have measured in the exact window width. On the other side of the log, you can again measure from the foundation line, or better, you can use a level across the top of the log to locate your height line on the other side. Steady the level with a wedge, then get an accurate distance to the header line. Mark the position of the level so it can be repositioned for the other side. Transfer your measurements to the other side, then snap an ink line between them. The width of the window will be located after the log has been placed on the ground. Finally, bring the center lines up if they are not already on the log, and your initial layout is complete. When the rest of the scribe has been completed, remove the log from the wall and place it for cutting. Before you cut out the groove and the top of the window opening, snap a center line onto the bottom of the log and use this to bring the cut lines across at right angles. The cut line can be located in a very standard and accurate way by using two squares on the center lines. Bring the original end mark up to locate this length on the center line. Use the same system to locate the mark on the inside level line. Draw the line by bending the square or steel straightedge around the log and joining up your three marks. You can measure in the width of the window to the other end from each of these three marks, or it may be a good idea to check the cut line location with the squares in order to avoid any possibility of making a mistake. Draw in the second cut line and score them both, and also score the notches or notch, as the case may be. Start the cut with the tip of the bar at the 2 o'clock position, then walk the saw or allow the saw to gain across the top of the log. Move very slowly and accurately with the cut right on the line. Do the same on the other end. Continue the cut to within 5 millimeters of the line and make sure that it's straight on the bottom. Now make a second cut right alongside this one and clean it out to the line. This will allow you to watch the tip of the saw as you plunge cut through. Then continue this cut to the end and, as usual, be cautious that you don't overcut any of the lines. Brush the flat down to the line, then lay out the end cuts for the keyway and the window trim. It is very important to make these cuts in the window header at this point in the building. If they are postponed until the wall is complete and on the foundation, they will become a very dangerous and time-consuming undertaking. There are, of course, many possible profiles for this cut. The one shown here has proved to be very satisfactory. Draw the center line down the log end and work from that. Measure in the width of the keyway, the width of the window frame, and the width of the trim on each side. Measure in the depth of these cuts. The accuracy of the original cut will affect the ease of this layout, and a smooth, straight cut will help maintain your standard of accuracy. If your window frame is very narrow, you may have to adjust the center line for the window so that the end of the groove in your log is covered. The 45-degree bevel cut is judged by cutting diagonally across the square trim layout. Your judgment should be sufficient here, but if you are unsure, you can make a target mark down the log equidistant from the inside terminal of the cut. Finish the 45-degree cuts, then mark in the back of the trim cut. Because the 45-degree cut may not be entirely plumb, make your line square with the top of the opening. This small cut might just as well be done with a sharp chisel. Cut out the keyway and the other end. It is a good idea to completely finish this work now while the log is in a convenient position on the ground. This work will have to be done at some point and can be done much more quickly now. Try to keep the keyway cut straight and an accurate fit to the key material you plan to use. If the cut is too tight, it will tend to split the log end, and if it is too loose, it will not do the job as well. It may pay to do a little practice before you do this first keyway cut. Use a small power plane or hand plane to finish the top of the opening. I would rather not use a sander here because good alignment of the work will allow the trim to fit better. Finish around the ends of the cut with a chisel or slick. Then cut out the notches and groove in the regular way. At that point, the header log is ready to be replaced on the wall. With the header log in place, it is customary to continue the building to the plate log and roof support, then return to the task of finishing the log ends and openings. I have included window, door, and other trim work here because it seems appropriate. Cut the sides of the opening to the final dimension. Use a saw guide or a padded saw to make the cut. Be sure that the guide plank is wedged into line with the center line of the wall so that you're getting a cut at right angles to the wall. Cut to within 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters of the bottom line on each side. Plunge cut through on the bottom line and finish the flat. Then use a level to mark in the cut lines for the keyway. It is customary to make this keyway 1 1/2 inches or 40 millimeters wide to fit a 2x4. Many other dimension materials could be used here, but get a good fit that is not too tight. If you have to drive the key piece in, it is too tight. Enter the saw into the start you have made on the header log. As you can see, it will be very easy to have a very dangerous kickback by touching the saw to the top of the header. Be very sure not to do that. Make the cut sufficiently deep for your material and parallel to the wall. There is a tendency to pinch the slot to the back. If you plan to place wires behind the key piece, make the slot deeper. The center of the slot can be cleaned out with several angled cuts, the same as we did with the header log. Position a guide board and use a large router to cut the trim recess. If you don't have such a machine, make the bevel cuts on the log ends, then cut this step with a large chisel. The angle for the bevel can be marked on the bottom flat and the saw aligned with that. The angle of 45 degrees or less appeals to me, but many other design cuts are possible. Doorways can be done in much the same way. The installation of the door and window frames will be dealt with in the first finishing video that will bring our project to lockup. You have only 3 more jobs to complete to finish your log work. 1. Cut out any archways. Be careful to keep the saw at right angles to the wall. Make a practice cut at least 6 inches inside the final cut line if you've not done this before. 2. Cut the log ends to the design and profile that you choose. And 3. Finally sand the log ends and openings with first 36 grit, then an 80 grit paper. At this point, your log house shell should be complete.